and I am basically Aquaman.
Don't say that.
At one point, I was part of a group of people who helped free a baby whale shark from a fishnet and released it back into the wild in Mozambique. So
you gotta one-up me like that. You should, the
right.
skinny part about that is that you didn't get to go viral for that.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 1 of Hogwash, a weekly podcast about business, tech, markets, AI, culture, innovation, news, media, and everything in between that two friends like to banter about. My name is Martin Totland, and I'm here with my good old friend, Mike the Lummox. Mike, what's going on?
Well, I mean, we're back. That's what's going on. How
That's
long has
right.
it been? We used to do a podcast together a few years ago. I think that was 4 years ago.
4 years, yeah. We started in the spring of 2022.
We called it claptrap, which, if you don't know what that word means, I think it just means like nonsensical talking and babbling. Like we don't like to take ourselves too seriously. But how long have we known each other? That's what I think is the most important thing.
About 16 or 17 years, I believe.
Okay.
Since our time in college.
You should have just lied, because when you say that, then people are like, oh, God. They're
dates us.
Old. Yeah, but really, it's been that long. And you're one of my friends who, we have such different personalities. And it always so interested me that we have such a great bond, because most people that I meet that have such different values, not different values, but different personality traits like you do to me, they don't want to be friends with me. They're like, this guy is loud, annoying, doesn't shut the hell up. You're like the only one. So I find you really fascinating as a personal scientific study.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's the nicest thing I've heard in a long time.
Do you want to give yourself an intro? Then I'll do a quick intro to me.
Sure, yes. So yeah, my name is Martin Totland. I have a background.
That totally sounded like I was on a Zoom call at work. I just want to say. You want to do a quick intro?
Totally.
Then I'll do a quick intro. Okay.
Everybody tell you who they are. Yeah, my name is Martin Totland. I am a professional communications worker. I have a background in journalism, photography, and media production. And I currently live in the St. Louis area, where I work as a communications advisor in the nonprofit world. And I also freelance as a photographer, and I have a lot of opinions about news and media and culture. And I'm a news junkie by heart. So that's what I like to talk about and what I like to focus on. Mike, why do you have an alias?
I like my pseudonym. I don't know what the right word is, pseudonym or alias. The reason why I have this is because when I first started podcasting, I was a little bit worried about just like, if I ever wanted to go work for a company like Google and they did an internet search on who I am, I didn't want it to be easy to find out who I was from those giant tech companies that could search billions of data points at scale. That was like kind of fear in my head. But, then I kind of kept it because I like the way it portrays me as I'm talking about things that are serious. I'm giving my honest, what I think are intellectual opinions, but I don't have any pretense about, who I am. Like, I'm just, if anything, at the end of the day, I'm just a big lummox. So if you don't like what I'm saying or you don't agree with it, I never pretended to be something that I'm not. I think a little bit of self-deprecation gives me that comfort to be more outspoken without feeling like I'm pontificating to people or something.
Right. I gotcha.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you a question.
Go for it.
You have a fun fact? This is how you break the ice. Fun fact. If you don't have one, I have one.
Oh, fun fact about myself?
Yeah. You want to think about it?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. I was stung by a stingray, but I'm okay though. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you didn't go the Steve Irwin route.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was my honeymoon, and I was in Mexico.
Yeah.
And like went all out. I got like this private part of the beach, and I think that's relevant because there was nobody there. So these stingrays, I guess, were just chilling in the shallow water. And I stepped in, and it was like a rocket propelled knife into my foot. It was like, and the pain was excruciating. It feels like you're dipping your foot in hot lava.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing that I learned from $1,300 of ER fees in Mexico, which I think is a lot for Mexico.
Yeah.
What kills stingray venom is hot water. So they filled up literally like a garbage can of hot water and stuck my foot in it. And they were like, here's your bill. But it worked. It was like, that's God. So anyway, that's my fun fact. If you don't have one, it's okay.
No, I do it because I am a child of the ocean and I am basically Aquaman.
Don't say that.
At one point, I was part of a group of people who helped free a baby whale shark from a fishnet and released it back into the wild in Mozambique. So
Why you gotta one up me like that? You should, the
that's right.
shitty part about that is that you didn't get to go viral for that. Like most people who do like those like, Good Samaritan things, they get like a parade online and maybe like a GoFundMe if they're like really poor or something. You didn't
Yeah.
get any of that. You
Nope.
just did it
Nothing.
literally for the good feels of it. Okay. Um
Yes.
so I think we should move on and to get into what we're going to talk about today.
Yes. And I know some of the topics we want to talk today about are related to AI. You want to talk about how it's affecting the job market and the state of the economy. I also know you want to talk about the biggest L's of the week and also Elon Musk's kind of dismantling and rebuilding of XAI
Yep.
before I get to my segment about some recent journalistic malpractice that I kind of just want to dive into a little bit because I thought it was pretty egregious.
Yeah, let's do it. So I want to talk about how AI is affecting jobs and the job market.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people, everyone in the US is pretty much as concerned about this, especially if you're a knowledge worker or a white collar worker. But I think it really goes far beyond that. Because if
Yeah.
there are job cuts to people who are at the top or people who are upper income, those are the people who pay for blue collar trade services and home services and things like that. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, it's only going to affect you. Sorry, loser. LOL. Sucks to be you if you work at like Google or whatever.
Yeah.
That's going to impact everyone. So I want to give my take because there are so many people who are doomsayers who say, "Oh my God, every single job is going to be destroyed by AI." And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, I think we'll be somewhere in the middle. But here's where we're seeing it already.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I bring this up is because not just because it's on everyone's mind, but because the stock markets have been so jittery about everything AI related, not only just the investment in AI, but then what will be impacted by it. And in fact, it's pretty contradictory because,
Yeah.
for example, recently there have been massive hits to software stocks. The idea being that AI could just displace software. And so software shouldn't be valued as high. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, companies that are building AI, hyperscalers like Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft,
Yeah.
we're seeing their stocks depleted because they're investing too much in AI. Well, both can't be true. You can't predict that they're not going to see the benefits of AI, but also they're going to displace this massive industry. So
Yeah.
people don't know what to think. That's where I'm coming at this from. So let me tell you what I think. First, let
Yeah.
me remind everyone that a couple weeks ago, Block, the company that owns Square and Cash App, which is founded
Mm-hmm.
by Jack Dorsey, who's a co-founder of Twitter, they
Yeah.
laid off 40% of their workers. And in the tweet, which is, I guess, the press release on their end that
Yeah.
Jack sent out, he said that basically AI can do tasks better than our employees can. So rather than delay the inevitable, we're going to lean into this first and we're going to just make the card cuts. Cut once, cut deep.
Rip the band-aid off and just kind of, do it quickly instead of having a slow bleed where they have to just periodically let people go.
And
Is
I
that what you
agree with
Yeah.
that approach. I mean, I wish just seeing I know I mentioned Google a few times, but like just seeing Google and Microsoft and other big companies, just even Amazon, just do like, well, here's a big swath of layoffs, and here's another one, and here's another one. I mean, I think that just creates brain drain, but not in the traditional sense, not like people leaving the company who are talented, but
Yeah.
talented people just being demotivated and not caring. I mean, we're all just people. If you fray our nerves because you tell us constantly that there's this looming threat of our jobs being eliminated and we can't predict how or when or why. We have literally no control over it. And that's
Yeah.
our livelihood. That creates that kind of stress where you're like, you know what? Am I going to work harder? Maybe. But I think that the quality of the work will drop. And that's part of what AI does too. So let me focus on Block for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You need to take that with a grain of salt. That's my opinion, because
They're laying off of 4,000 people. You need to
their
take that part with a
message
grain of salt,
their
or
message that they're doing this because they said they're a very healthy company and
right.
that they don't need to make any cuts, but they're just, embracing the inevitable. That's
Mm-hmm.
bullshit. This company and their stock has been dropping precipitously for a long time. It's been I mean, at best, you could say it's been flat for a while, but really, it's like over the last year, it just keeps losing value. Because
Really?
why? They position themselves as a crypto company. That's why they changed the name to Block, because they were all in on crypto. Well, oops, crypto now is declining, and it doesn't seem to be a rebound anywhere in sight because a lot of crypto
Mhm.
traders are going to other things like prediction markets, et cetera. And so now they need a narrative shift. This is their narrative shift to be the
Yeah.
AI first, AI leaning fintech company. And their stock went up like 26%. And just
Mhm.
another thing on taking it with a grain of salt, Jack Dorsey does not exactly have a stellar track record of being a manager. Not only is he known for these, long ass, months long retreats into Africa and like weird spiritual centers and stuff. I mean, he's kind of like the ultimate Silicon Valley stereotype caricature. I mean, this guy literally said once that he only eats once a day, 5 times a week. And he said that all he eats is just a bowl of noodles. Okay, so that I mean, that's just an aside. This is kind of like illustrate how fucking weird he is, but
Right. You know
he
who he reminds me of as a fictional character?
don't say
Did you ever watch?
Gwyneth Paltrow. Okay,
No, no.
sorry.
Did you ever watch Silicon Valley on HBO?
I fucking loved it.
That is a fantastic show, but the way you're describing him reminds me of the CEO of the
Gavin
fictional tech.
Belson.
Yes, Hooli.
Yeah, yeah,
Gavin
yeah.
Belson of Hooli. That's
That's
exactly
what
what
it
it sounds
is.
like.
And that
Yeah.
show parodied actual people. Like some of it was not that far from reality.
No,
You
no. It
see
was so
exactly why.
accurate that it was painful to watch at times,
Anyone
especially if
who
you
hasn't
know
seen
any
that
people
show,
in.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
sorry. I was just gonna say, anyone who hasn't seen that show, like that is an incredible show.
Oh, it's
So
amazing.
funny. I always wanted like main characters to win and actually like have their company like grow, but it never does. Never, they always
No.
just step on their own feet. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, this isn't meant to like shit on Jack Dorsey. I'm just saying like you have to take it with a grain of salt. But let me just say other things that he's done.
Yeah.
Jack Dorsey through Block bought Tidal, the music streaming app that was supposed to be a competitor to Spotify that Jay-Z founded. Tidal was a colossal failure before they bought it. But I think because he just wanted to hang out with Jay-Z, I'm pretty sure he gave him a board seat. I have to check that. But I'm pretty sure he gave Jay-Z a board seat at Block.
Which
Okay.
is weird to me because I think that rich people like that, they can just hang out anyway. It's a pretty small circle that these people wander in. So I feel like, if you're a tech billionaire or, a music billionaire, you're probably crossing paths at some point.
Yeah. And also, like, you're the CEO of you're a multi-billionaire with, access to many resources through your company. Like, you
Yeah.
kind of have the upper hand in that relationship. I'm not saying a relationship should all be transactional. Anyway,
Right.
I want to kind of move on from just Jack Dorsey alone, but like buying Tidal was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen a CEO do for $300 million just to hang
Yeah.
out with Jay-Z, because there was literally no strategic synergy between Block and Tidal. Even at the time, Jack was like, yeah, like we could do something where we can like have fans pay creators using blockchain technology, and that'll be the value add. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? How is that? Why do you need to buy this company to do that if you were going to offer that service?
Also,
Anyway,
why do you need to make it blockchain based? Money's already digital.
well, because they needed to bolster their narrative shift into blockchain as they changed their name to Block.
Right.
I mean,
But it's kind of pointless if you can already just digitally send money to people quickly and safely.
well, if
Why does it
they,
have to be on the blockchain?
I mean, and I'm not defending this, but like if
Right.
they were to create that theoretical technology, it would theoretically create more transactions and purchasing of crypto, which would theoretically raise the value of Block. Again, still fucking stupid, but
Yeah.
I guess if I was being generous, that's the thinking. All right, so back to what is going to be impacted by AI.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we know so far. I think the idea that Anthropic released a report on March 5th saying basically what the blast radius is for AI in terms of job market. And the number one thing is kind of what I already knew and most people already knew, which is anything math and computer science related. So software engineering, data analytics, AI is really good at that. And companies are already making those investments and replacing engineers with AI. If you just look at the last few earnings calls and what the CEOs say for Meta, for Microsoft, and Spotify. The Spotify co-CEO said in the last earnings call that their top devs hadn't written a single line of code since December. So, I mean,
Jeez.
that's like, that's pretty much signaling to you what they're going to do, which is to cut
Yeah.
more devs and have more, oversight of AI. Meta said that their top devs were 80% more productive using AI, and that in the future they'd have a mix of AI engineers and human engineers. And Microsoft said that their CTO said that 95% of all code will be written by AI by 2030. entry-level CS jobs are already dropping. From 2022 to 2025, it dropped by 8%. I
Yeah,
have
if
to
you're a
assume that's
college grad these
accelerated.
days, if you're a college grad with a degree in software engineering or any like IT or like anything that related to software, I feel like it's a really tough job market to step into after
Oh,
leaving
yeah.
higher
What's the
education.
unemployment rate for new grads? Like 10% last I checked. 10%. And
Jesus.
again, it's that nervousness and lack of comfort with the economy that leads to consumer spending decisions, and who's comfortable with the economy? People at the top. Why is the GDP growing? It's government spending, which is part of GDP, and people who have property and assets, which are
Hmm.
people with money. They feel comfortable because assets have been going up. Stock prices have been going up. But for everyone else, it's not. So if you feel comfortable, the wealth effect kicks in and you spend money. But the recent report, I just saw this like yesterday, so I'm going to be a little bit rough with this, but the recent reported GDP growth is that it slowed down to 0.7%. 0.7%, which is basically just means like that's just government spending. So anyway, the whole point is that I think let me just say this, and I'll say what I think about the economy.
Yeah.
Software engineers are already seeing it, and they are nervous. I have a friend at Google who's like, "Hey, I used to do a ton of coding, and now I literally just like monitor AI." It turns out that writing a code base is like a perfect instruction manual for an LLM because it's all text based. It's
Mm.
all it's like extremely dense in terms of different instructions, and every line of code you write is really an instruction, like do this, if this, do this, if this, do this. That is like turns out that that's the best way for LLMs to work, to replicate that and to build on top of that. Now, they're
Okay.
still going to need human oversight, but that's a huge part of the blast radius.
Yeah.
Um, I think that for other knowledge jobs, it's a bit overstated. Why? Because if you're in some kind of customer facing role, like I am,
Yeah.
and this may sound biased, but I do want to tell people that there are. What may happen is that there may be a contraction of those types of jobs because let's say I can work with 10 customers today at any given time. Maybe with the addition of AI and productivity enhancement, I can work with 20. So then
Yeah.
necessarily that means that we need half the amount of customer facing people. But it's not as much of a hit, direct hit as it is to software engineering.
Right.
What will be the timeline for that to happen? Here's the thing I want people to think about. It takes a long time for big companies to adopt new technology. They don't. Most companies have just gotten through the digital transformation phase where they're taking all of their data, moving it from their on-premise cloud servers, so like on-premise servers into the cloud, and then
Mm.
adopting all these like software, enterprise software like Salesforce and Workday or whatever. Most companies have like just gotten through that, and
Yeah.
now and that was a multi-year process. Now they're just gonna, they're not just going to switch all their workforce over to AI. There's a lot of things that have to happen for that to be reality. Not
Okay.
the least of which is training people how to work completely differently. That does not happen overnight. The counter argument would be that, well, if we just learn people's workflows, what they do at work, and we just build a bunch of AI agents to do that, we don't need to
Yeah.
worry about training people. And that is true. But the likelihood that that's going to be done correctly and at a large enough scale to see like a huge drop in the job market, I think is unlikely. I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions or thoughts. I've just been on a roll.
Oh yeah. No, geez. I read this post recently. It was a very interesting article about how like frontier model AI programs are now so advanced, like they can really do a lot of stuff and replace a lot of people who work in knowledge work, and especially when it comes to software development and code writing and that type of thing. But the author was making a lot of exaggerated claims about like how quickly it's really coming for everybody's job, no matter what industry you're in. And I took it on face value a little too easily. And my friend, who's very deep into AI work at a big corporation where he works with AI integration into the whole company, he kind of helped me kind of temper my, I guess, reaction a little bit by saying that, most people aren't like the big CEOs of tech companies who are immediately trying to just replace everybody with AI to, boost profits and save costs. And also, these things take years and years to implement. Even though the technology may be capable of doing certain things, that doesn't mean that the people who are in charge of implementing that technology can make it happen as quickly as, maybe the most like kind of techno futurist people are assuming. And also, maybe not everybody has the view of this as the people in Silicon Valley do, that it's something that we all should immediately reach for and try to make happen as quickly as possible. I think a lot of people who work in tech kind of lose sight of what the average person wants to happen and maybe kind of supports or doesn't support.
I do think that that is all spot on. The technology has a theoretical capability,
Yeah.
but always, even if it could do everyone's job today, there's always a lag. And it's it's right now the best models are all LLMs. They process language. Not
Yeah.
every job processes language. Like if you're going to have AI make decisions in the physical world,
Yeah.
that's a totally different data set. And I'm not saying that those data sets aren't going to get better, but there's just
Right.
not as much data around that. Like the reason why LLMs got so good so fast is because the GPT architecture change that OpenAI pioneered. Well, yeah, they pioneered it. Google came out with it, sort of. Um, and because most of the training data was already there on Twitter, on Reddit, on Facebook, like on the internet,
Yeah.
right? And so you could see why they mimic things that people say on the internet. Which we're going to talk about Moltbook and Meta buying Moltbook and all these.
Yeah.
It's a social network where AI agents just talk to each other, and they
Right.
sound like like deranged humans, which is like hilarious. But like that's because of where the training data comes from. So what I want to say, one of the last couple of things I want to say on this is that um, the amount of investment going into AI from big cap tech companies is so massive that they are expecting a payoff. And so there's some degree of this where they need to force it through. If you look at like basically, the S&P 500 and really like I think about 20% of all global stocks are AI related companies, Nvidia, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon,
Mhm.
like 20% of all global companies are those companies. So, like, it's weird because if everything plays out as everyone wants it, as those companies want it to, and as the world needs it to, you're going to see a really sharp decline in the job market and therefore the economy. But if it doesn't play out, that's also going to be a problem, because then what's going to happen? All those companies that are now, Nvidia is a $5 trillion company or almost 5 trillion. What are they?
Mhm.
They're going to be a $2 trillion company. And then what's going to happen? Every investment manager and portfolio and 401k holder loses a shitload of their holdings. And what's going to happen? Like there's no good way that this ends long term. You
Yeah.
know, I think like maybe like the best case scenario for the short term is like we kind of are in this phase where people are like, okay, we're getting there. Like we're getting there, but we never actually get there. And just the fact that it hasn't gone wrong or right is enough to keep the economy afloat. But you have to think at some point there's going to be a correction where people are like, all right, you know what? Like this either is working or this either isn't working. But like, yeah, we're talking about just between like Meta,
Mhm.
Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. We're talking like hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, it's just an insane amount of expenditure, and
Yeah.
data centers are not cheap to run. It's not just the initial build out. Like a lot of capex. Like okay, so capex. If I buy a building, that's capex, right? But the maintenance of the building is nowhere near the initial cost of it. When
Right.
you're building data centers, one of the biggest input costs is chips, and chips have a shelf life. When you're using chips to train AI models, they
Okay.
last maybe like 3 to 5 years because they they're doing so many computations that there's so much heat involved that it degrades them. Now, of course,
Yeah.
companies are working on that, but they also have like an incentive to make them obsolete at some point so you replace them. And even if they don't become obsolete because they don't work anymore, as soon as NVIDIA releases a newer, faster chip, you're going to have to buy it. And these NVIDIA chips are not cheap. I don't know all the prices, but like some of them, they're like 50K a pop.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not. You have to replace them every 3 to 5 years. I just I think that there's a little bit of over exuberance from those companies who are investing in it, where they
Yeah.
don't want to miss the boat. And it's very profitable. It used to be anyway. Now it's kind of shifting, but it used to be very profitable to just put AI behind your name and say, you know what,
Yeah.
we're an AI company, and that was enough. But anyway,
Do you feel like it's kind of like a catch-22? If you don't take part in it now, you're screwed. But if you do take part in it, you might be on a train to kind of a train that heads to, not the best destination in the end. Is that kind of what you mean?
I think that if you're not part of it, you actually, I mean, lately those companies are like performing better. If you're not part of it as an individual, you definitely risk like, let's like try to teach your grandparents to use like a web browser, right? You don't want to be in that bucket. You
Yeah.
want to be in the bucket that has, AI mastery, because at the very least, we all know that in all of our jobs, it doesn't matter what you do, when you touch a screen, there will be AI there.
Yeah, it's already
That's going to happen. It literally doesn't matter what you do. You be like, "Oh, I'm a plumber." Yeah. When you go into your home services app to like look at the next appointment or whatever, you're gonna see AI there. When you have an issue and you need to reach out to someone from headquarters or whatever, and through the app, or you need to like log an issue, it's gonna be AI. So everyone needs to have some kind of competence with it,
Yeah.
as individuals. As companies, it's very weird. The markets are so jittery and, as I mentioned, contradictory. But the real issue here, this is the final point I want to make on this. I know I've gone for so long, but you could tell I've had all these thoughts
Yeah.
bubbling up in me for years now since we did our last podcast. Is that um, the economy is shit, and AI is like kerosene to an already burning fire. That is the problem. That is the problem. And I'm talking about the US specifically, right? The
Yeah.
economy is shit. How do we know? Don't look at vanity metrics. Don't look at GDP. Don't
What are
look at
vanity metrics?
GDP is a vanity metric. The stock
Explain.
market indices is a vanity metric. It means that it looks good on the surface, but
Yeah.
underneath, it makes you feel good, right? It's like saying I bench 400 pounds. The vanity metric, right?
Yeah.
We know some guys who bench 400 pounds that like, they're kind of like toad shaped, and
Right. Yeah.
their motions are toad like too. Well, I don't know, maybe toads are
And they're out
athletic,
of
but
breath walking up a flight of stairs.
yeah, you're describing me. So yeah. Yeah, but yeah, the economy, like there's all these signals underneath, right? Just look at like the bottom 50%. The bottom is falling out of the economy. Credit card debt is up significantly. The percentage of the money that people save is down significantly.
Hmm.
Uh, and you look at things like, just like other things, like the number of gig workers has more than doubled since 2020. Part of that, sure, because Uber, DoorDash have grown in popularity, but also because that's the kind of job that's available for people who are underemployed. Unemployment percentage is also a vanity metric because it doesn't even count people who are underemployed. If you look at that true metric, it
Hmm.
would probably be, it's more like 8%. If you look at unemployment and underemployment,
Yeah.
and then you look at, like we've talked about, new grads and unemployment rate there. So you have this thing, and here's the worst thing about the US in terms of the job market. I actually
Yeah.
think it's not about income. We have enough income paths, whether it's through social services or social assistance, or whether it's through lower paying jobs, where you
Yeah.
can make enough money to eat from most people, right? The
Yeah.
real issue is healthcare. What do you do when you lose your job? You lose your healthcare. Oh, well, go
Yeah.
buy healthcare. How? I don't have a fucking job. That
Right.
is that is the scariest thing here, because we all know how fast healthcare costs can rise. And so
Oh my
for
God.
me,
Yeah.
if it was just, honestly, maybe this is controversial, but I really think this is true. If it was just the prospect of losing my job, it wouldn't
Hmm.
be nearly as scary if there was healthcare provided. And I know you're from countries, well, you're American, but you are from countries where
Yes.
that's not even like a question. Should we
No.
take care of people?
Yeah. No. Um, yeah, no, in Norway and Sweden, where my families are from, it's just healthcare is not even remotely tied to your employment status. So if you need anything, you can go get it. There might be a copay here and there, depending on what kind of procedure you need, or if you're going in for something that you're just, that's elective, or if it's something that's emergency, then, you don't pay a dime. It doesn't come out of your own pocket at all. So all just funded through taxation. But yeah, here, if it's, you got to buy it if you don't have a job. And I guess you're required now to have health insurance. But if you can't afford it, you kind of
How can you
left in this
afford it without
weird,
a job?
yeah,
And
you're just left in
and
this limbo
and when you
state.
get it individually, it's based on your health record. So if you're 50 something years old, even if you're healthy, you're gonna pay more. If you, God forbid, if you have like, chronic diseases or whatever, I mean, you're
Yeah.
gonna pay more. I just, anyway, the whole issue here is that last year, 2025, we had 1.2 million layoffs. How many jobs did we add? 181,000.
Those are the
This
real
is,
numbers for
yeah,
2025.
yeah, they actually revised it down. I think it was like they had like the total jobs added at like 585,000. They revised it down to 181, and
Yeah.
85% of those were added before April, which is when they did, I hate to say this, but Liberation Day, where they, unleashed a bunch of tariffs on the world. I hate using
Yeah.
propaganda terms from the Trump administration, but that's
Right.
what they've called it. I know I'm saying it in a mocking way. So,
Right.
like, what are we talking about here? I mean,
So the jobs
even
were added, the jobs that were added, 85% of them happened before those tariffs were announced.
yes.
Oh, geez.
And look, even for gig workers, like those companies, DoorDash and Uber, are actively trying to automate those people away.
Yeah.
DoorDash released a bot called Dot, a delivery robot that can hold like up to 8 pizzas or some shit. Uber's whole thing is like, having autonomous vehicles. They know that's the future. I mean,
Yeah.
Uber would rather be Waymo right now for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
but it's costly to do that. But like,
Mm-hmm.
the Uber CEO is trying to be like, oh, well, there'll be human drivers and there'll be AV drivers, and people can choose which one they want.
Mm-hmm.
No one's gonna choose if it's $3 less a ride.
For
I'm
the
choosing the
for the
AV.
robot delivery. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, for either, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you
So
also know that that's just language he says to kind of try to make the transition to, autonomous delivery vehicles a
yeah,
little
it's,
bit
it's
softer
PR.
and easier. Yeah, it's PR, easier to kind of digest for people instead of we're going to fire all of our human and contract employees and just automate everything.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my bottom line is that AI is not going to hit as many jobs as we think. It is hitting some jobs, particularly computer science and math. But the real issue that's compounding everything is the economy. And I can point to why that's happening. High
Mm-hmm.
interest rates are a big part of it.
Yeah.
Tariffs are a big part of it. There's just been a complete focus on companies and people who already have wealth, and a total lack of focus on everyone else. Like,
Yeah.
like if we talked about healthcare. If people had healthcare, like if they had it paid for, mostly paid for, what would that do to the economy? Not only would they spend more because they feel safer, but they would
Yeah.
actually have more money to spend, right?
Right.
If people had, tax credits for things that we want them to do, like having children
Mm-hmm.
or getting married, like they would do that more, and that would boost the economy. So anyway, I I am I am nervous. I mean, that's basically what it is. I'm nervous, but I'm not so nervous because of AI. I'm nervous because of what AI is doing to an already shitty situation. That's what I'm nervous about.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right. Shit. Okay, so we're going to change gears real quick. What I wanted to talk about was the news coverage of the attempted bomb throwing and terrorist attack at the Gracie Mansion protest last weekend. So you and I are recording this on March 14th. Last weekend, so a week ago today, on March 7th, there was a protest outside of the mayor's mansion in New York City, your old home. So it was a bunch of people who were led by this guy named Jake Lang. Do you know who that is?
No.
Jake Lang was a January 6th rioter who was pardoned by Trump. And since then, he's kind of tried to become more and more known on the internet for just kind of showing up to different kind of movements and happenings around the country and just kind of acting as odious as possible, trying to provoke a reaction out of people. He was in Minnesota, like basically walking around in a bulletproof vest, trying to play as a tactical gear bro and siding with ICE and kind of antagonizing locals in Minneapolis and St. Paul and putting it all on social media. And then he organized this protest outside of the mayor's mansion in New York City that he called I think, Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City. And, obviously it's directed at the current mayor, Zoran Mamdani, who's a Muslim. And there were a lot of counter protesters there who were kind of, advocating for New York as an open city. Everybody's welcome here. That's all fine and well. Obviously, Jake Lang is a huge douche, and they were going to do a pig roast outside of the mayor's mansion because they're trying to make it as offensive as possible, I guess, because he's a Muslim and we're going to roast a pig and just try to be generally as obnoxious as we absolutely can.
I mean,
And
so stupid.
yeah, no, no, there are lots to condemn about the protest itself, but it's kind of what you've come to expect from certain characters on the right. People whose only currency and whose only oxygen is just this kind of noxious form of trolling in real life. It's like the internet is spilled into the streets in some form. So during the protest, there's counter protesters, and they are far outnumbering the Jake Lang crowd, the people who are there to, cause a scene outside of the mayor.
Surprise that in New York City you would be outnumbered by people who don't want your racist,
Yeah,
Islamophobic bullshit.
yeah, exactly. And so while all this is happening, there's a man named Walter Masterson who's
Yeah, I
using a
know him.
megaphone, and he's chanting, "Yeah, everyone is welcome in New York City," all that stuff. And, because we live in a digital panopticon, everything is filmed in 4K and 1080p from all angles. Everybody's got a phone. There's reporters there. There's media. Things are being filmed and photographed from every conceivable angle. And a 19-year-old man, jumps up and kind of pushes Walter Masterson down and throws a homemade explosive device over him towards the Jake Lang protesters. Luckily, the bomb fails to detonate and nobody gets hurt, which is, thankfully. But because there were cops on the scene trying to keep protesters and counter protesters apart from each other, they immediately spring into action and they apprehend two people immediately. Emir Balat, who was 17 years old, and 19-year-old Ibrahim Kayumi. And they have allegedly told police that they were inspired by ISIS and that they wanted the attack to be, quote, even larger than the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing, where I think 3 people died and, dozens were injured. And so, excuse me, the problem I have, and what I've been kind of like noticing in a lot of this coverage, is that the media takes this very passive voice when they're describing the events of the day. And the worst offender here was by far CNN. So the tweet from CNN reads like this: 2 Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day, enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change, as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zoran Mamdani's home.
I
It
mean,
makes it sound like the events of the day were just totally out of their control.
yeah, like
Like
you
the
know what
arrest just
they
happened
just
to
made it. They
them.
just they were gonna have a normal day, but then they decided to
Yeah.
throw a bomb, and
Yeah, but it
because of
wasn't
that,
really
their
within
lives
their
are forever
control.
altered, which is like the part of it I give the least shit about.
Yeah, first of all, who gives a shit if their lives are forever altered? If you show up with a homemade bomb full of bolts and screws and nails, and just by the grace of God, it doesn't detonate because presumably you don't know what you're doing, thankfully, when you're making a bomb. And then the initial kind of coverage on social media, which unfortunately is what most people see, the headlines, they see those social media posts, and the full article doesn't really get as much traction as you would like it to, perhaps, where more details are available. There's this passive framing of people who are showing up with the intent to cause harm, to kill people. And also that it wasn't, and also, yeah, CNN anchor Abby Phillips framed it as a bomb attempt on Zoran Mamdani's life, making it sound as though it was the right-wing protesters who were responsible for the bombing initially, when the bomb was in fact thrown at the Jake Lang crowd, who, however much I despise them, they don't deserve to die in a terrorist bombing attack. But I just don't understand what it is that compels people in the media to take this passive voice and kind of downplay the clear intent, especially now that everything's on camera. You can hear the people screaming Allahu Akbar. You can see the guy jumping up and throwing the bomb. You can hear from police statements and reports afterwards that, they wanted to cause a bigger than the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing attack. And then we're just going to frame it as like 2 teenagers who were just kind of wrapped up in events of the day that were outside of their control. And, maybe they didn't really mean what they ended up doing here, and they kind of fell into this kind of attack without really having any sort of internal locus of control regarding the events. So I like reading this guy named Stephen Knight. He's a commentator from the UK, and I really like the way he summed it up. He said that, the early reporting was pretty ambiguous, and it suggested that the far right protesters were the ones that were the ones who were throwing bombs. And he just kind of nails it down when he says that a lot of Western progressives, they suffer from this, what he calls a profound lack of theory of mind when it comes to religious extremism. And he says that a lot of people in the West cannot comprehend that jihadists truly believe that their religious worldview and hate the West because it has not submitted to their view. And that society remains kind of impotent because it prefers to obsess over like the fear of being perceived as Islamophobic or their tone rather than confronting the reality of people who want to commit slaughter in the name of their religious worldview. And I don't know if that's what's behind this kind of passive initial coverage. By the way, CNN deleted that tweet and apologized for it. And then Abby Phillips and another anchor whose name I forget had to issue corrections on air because they had, failed to, I guess, display the event in the proper context or whatever they said. And it didn't kind of reflect the gravity of the moment. The New York Times did another weird one where they focused on one of them they called him a would-be entrepreneur who used to be selling sneakers. Now he's 18 and he's arrested for, terrorism charges. It's like, I don't really give a shit.
Yeah. It's almost
about
like
his background as like a sneaker salesman.
It's almost like they're saying, it's almost like they're getting at like, well, this guy, what made this guy do this? That's almost what it feels like they're going with that. And I mean, if the first thing that always comes to mind for me, not always, but in this case comes to mind for me is, man, we live in a world where there are companies profiting off of making us fucking hate each other. And there are no regulations. Now, I am making a jump to assume that social media is behind this, but if you kind of think about just the facts that you've outlined, why would this Jake Lane guy be there at all? I mean, first of all,
well, that's his whole bread and butter is antagonizing people.
Why? Because, if you did that in 1958, I don't know, some random year before the age of the internet, it wouldn't have, there's no benefit to doing that, but there's a clear benefit to it because it gets views, I assume. I mean, I don't even have to assume. That's like, I'm 99.99% positive of that. And I fucking hate the idea that a January 6th rioter who was arrested and then pardoned.
Yeah.
That people who commit crimes get to profit off them because they get notoriety. And that's another byproduct of social media and how things spread. Because if they didn't have social media, they wouldn't have the platform to profit. I think about Anna Sorokin, which again is not like this, right? But
wait, who's that? What is that?
That fake German heiress who was really like a Russian thief. Anna Delvey, she went by.
Oh,
come on, Martin.
No. I've heard about this. I don't know the details.
I think what caught her was that she committed some kind of wire fraud or securities fraud where she like basically lied about getting a loan for something and got a loan for a significant sum, and that's what put her in jail. But what happened after all of that is that she became famous and she's probably making a lot of money because she was making like stupid, ugly, like works of art when she was in prison in New York City and, selling them. And she, had like a popular social media account. She got the book deal and the documentary deal. Like, fuck that. I'm tired of that. Stop elevating people who do shitty things. Let's just put that aside because the real issue here is, these guys who were committing an act of terrorism. Why?
Yeah, and
why
me,
is there so much?
Oh no, I was gonna say, obviously, I condemn both the Jake Lang guy for showing up and staging like a highly offensive protest just for the sake of being offensive outside the mayor's office. Like, you can have your political disagreements with the mayor or whatever, but showing up and doing a pig roast outside of the mayor's office when as a Muslim is just downright offensive and disgusting. But then also the terror or would-be terrorists showing up and tossing homemade bombs, luckily failed to go off. Like, I wish the media could just give me a fact-based retelling, or the facts did come out, but what is it that compels people in the media to take this passive approach when describing what happened? That's pretty well documented. Like, you don't need to downplay anything. Just
I
say
think they
what
don't
happened.
know. I think they don't know what happened, but the one of the gaps between traditional media and a blogger or something. Well, people don't blog anymore, but well, maybe they do. But like, you're just a
Vlog.
blogger, doesn't have any kind of journalistic standards. Is a blogger could just get half the facts, get it half right, but they
Mhm.
came out with it first, and they get the views right. And the traditional media has to follow journalistic standards, which you know a lot about, I'm sure.
Yeah, it just
But
slows
if
them
they're
down, and
slow,
yeah.
they miss a lot of that initial coverage, which is where they make their money. My best guess is that's what's driving it. It's like, get this shit out now. Okay, we have half the facts. Jake Lang was there. Somebody threw oh yeah, it must have been their side. Like, without having the facts when they really should be. And that's honestly, that this has been the case for a while. The
Mm,
headlines is what gets the attention. Refer back to my rant on about social media. The
yeah.
headline gets the attention. What happens after the headline almost is immaterial, right? But if you're CNN, you can't take that stance because you have to protect your credibility. That's the only thing that makes you different. But it's a disadvantage to
But
them when
this
they're
is the
trying to get
exact
the
type of
scoop.
thing that undermines their credibility, don't you think? At
Of
least
course,
in part.
of course it does. It's the conflict between, we need to make money, and here's a big story, and we need to get
We
the
need to move fast.
there's gonna be X number of views about this story. Let's call it 100 million, a billion, whatever the fuck it is. There's gonna
Right.
be X number of views. We need to capture 10% of that. But if we wait, every minute we wait, that 10% goes to 9.9 to 9.8 to 9.7. I'm making up numbers, but that's the rationale and the incentive behind doing it fast. Otherwise, if
I
there was no incentive to do it fast, they would have gotten it right, probably.
right. I feel like you could have moved as quickly as you did, but still avoided this like passive downplaying of the seriousness of what actually took place. I guess that's what bothers me.
They're
Like, you can
used
get the facts wrong and correct them later, but this like, oh, a pair of teenagers entered into New York City for what could have been a nice day exploring the city in warm weather. Like, that shouldn't be your
Yeah, I
lead.
mean, that sounds like it was written by AI. I don't know. It
No,
wouldn't
no, no, no.
surprise me.
We know exactly the journalist who wrote it. And
Do
it's
we
somebody
know
with a
that they wrote it, though? Just saying.
well, okay. So here's where it gets a little bit more complicated. A lot of journalists will write and file their story, but they're not responsible for the headline. And I don't know if it's the person who wrote the story is the person responsible for the text that went up on CNN's Twitter post.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, tough to know exactly who wrote exactly which words and who published them where. But it's just I'm
yeah, no,
fucking
I get your point that there's two different issues. There's the getting it wrong, and then there's the passive way of explaining it. And look,
yes,
I think the
exactly.
best way that there used to be a time when
Hmm.
people would subscribe to newspapers, like physical newspapers, and if they fucked up, or if they did something that was antithetical to journalistic standards, which I think both of those things fall into that bucket. That's the
Yes,
commonality between
I
them.
would agree.
If they did that, then they would lose subscribers, and therefore they didn't have an incentive to get things out just to get the headline out. But
No,
in
and also
in
it
an
had one issue
ad-based
a day.
attention economy, it's different.
Yeah, I
And
think
that doesn't explain the poor writing. I don't know what to attribute that to. I can only guess. I can only guess that there's just a lack of editors because their business model is bad,
mm,
and
yeah.
CNN doesn't have a lot of viewers, doesn't make a ton of money. It's a great brand, and it certainly is important, but like, they make most of their money probably during like election cycles. Yeah.
Oh, you think
So I'm
so?
just, oh, I don't know the numbers, but 100%. Because how many people have CNN on 24 hours a day during like the days leading up to an election? Like, there are people. I did that. I definitely, like, the election day.
Hmm.
That's where they make their money, and then they have the debates and stuff. So I just assume that there's just a lack of people managing these, editing and stuff. But I don't know for sure. It's just an L on
Yeah,
on
it is
all
it
around.
is a big L because I feel like this It and the in their own acknowledgement that they had to delete the post because it failed to treat the moment with the seriousness and kind of gravity that it deserves, was the reason that they took it down, and two of their anchors had to go out and kind of apologize for their very quick um incorrect retelling of the sequence of events that happened there. And if they'd had a higher budget and more responsible editors in place, maybe this could have been caught, and they wouldn't have had yet another instance that kind of adds to the undermining of their credibility and the view of a lot of the public. So yeah, just this kind of failure to treat it in the way that it should be, and also this kind of mal description of what exactly happened. You don't need to
I
do
don't
it.
know if that's a word.
But you know what I mean, though.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so that was the most recent case of journalistic malpractice that I just briefly want to touch on. But also as a counterpoint, I wanted to recommend a very good piece of journalism, excuse me. It actually came out in February, so last month, but it's a series of articles from ProPublica, which is a nonprofit newsroom that does a lot of really impressive, like, investigative reporting. And they took up the case of trying to see what the actual on the ground consequences of the dismantling of USAID was in Africa, especially. And so they sent two reporters to South Sudan and I believe Kenya, if I'm not mistaken, to see just what the actual repercussions were of the defunding of a lot of USAID supported programs were over there. And it's just funny detail is that one of the people who did the reporting is a guy named Brett Murphy, who was one of my classmates at UC Berkeley, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning and George K. Polk award winning investigative reporter. He's really, really great. And they wanted to kind of look into this claim that Marco Rubio has said at a number of times, is that, quote, no one has died because of budget cuts to the USAID. And they took him at his word. And it's like, okay, we're going to go see if that's actually true. And there is, they found really credible case to be made that there was a cholera outbreak and lots of people lost their lives in South Sudan and Kenya just because of, Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency bros coming in and, quote unquote, as the Elon Musk said on Twitter, spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper. So any case, that's
such a contemptible guy. I mean,
yeah,
I can't imagine being that rich where you can literally buy a country, not a small country, a big country. You could do anything you want. You could be a father to your 14 plus kids, or you could be, you could be
14 plus kids.
You could literally, you could fund school lunches in the US and be considered a fucking god, or you could be a drug addicted loser, techno authoritarian loser who just gets a thrill off of seeing people suffer. That's what he fucking is. It's amazing. You know what's amazing to me? Sorry, I don't want to focus too much on Elon Musk, but I have so many. When we get into tech, as soon as we border into tech, it's like, oh my God, all my neurons start firing. It's crazy to me how much reputation he's lost, which you can see in the sales of Tesla.
Oh yeah.
And yet his net worth has quadrupled in the last 4 years. Fuck you. Fuck you for being such a piece of shit and then doing all the wrong things that society loathes. And oh yeah, you needed another $600 billion. God, what loser mentality. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to recommend this series of articles from ProPublica with journalists Brett Murphy and I want to make sure I get her name right. The series is called The End of Aid, and it's written by Anna Maria Barry Jester and Brett Murphy, and photography by Peter DeCampo. And so here's the headline for one of them. Trump officials celebrated with cake after slashing aid. Then people died of cholera. Behind closed doors in Washington, top advisors made a series of decisions that have had devastating repercussions for the poorest country on earth. We went to South Sudan and found people who died as a result, directly contradicting Marco Rubio's claims. So I just wanted to give a shout out to people who actually do proper investigative reporting. And so, yeah, if you want to give money somewhere to people who do this kind of journalism that we all need and that we all depend on, throw a couple of bucks to ProPublica.
Okay, Thank you for listening to our last two segments. We're going to finish off with the biggest L's of the week. I started coming up with the idea because I was putting together all these news stories I wanted to talk about, and my God, there are so many. But I realized that none of them are good or good, happy feeling. They're just like L's or across the board. So let's start off with Elon Musk laying off a bunch of people at XAI. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
first of all, XAI has lost 10 of their 12 co-founders. 10 of them left. I mean, you, what point are you going to look at the mirror and be like, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem. But no,
Yeah.
narcissists don't do that. But here's what I want to bring up about this. He said that they're laying off a bunch of people because they have to rebuild the company basically from scratch after all these co-founders left. The company recently was merged with SpaceX. It's at an estimated $250 billion valuation, which is hilarious, and really just like totally made up number.
Right.
SpaceX is expected to IPO this year at 1.5 to 1.75 trillion dollars, which is ridiculous, by the
Jeez.
way. You're
Yeah.
basically taking, let's just talk about XAI for a second. Actually, let's talk about Elon Musk first as a manager. As a manager, Elon Musk has shown extreme incompetence. In fact, the one company he has that you could say is absolutely not a dumpster fire is SpaceX. It's actually profitable. It doesn't have a poor balance sheet. It doesn't have a lot of it has a lot of capex, but it doesn't have a lot of debt. It actually
Right.
makes money in an area that is like, has a lot of future growth. The space industry is growing like, I don't know, 15 to 20% a year in terms of spend. And I think that the fact that Elon Musk took the crazy ass risk, probably at a time in his life when he was more lucid and less high on drugs, to actually go all in on space exploration.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one win is so crazy to people that they give him credit for everything else on the off chance that he might do it again.
Right.
And even Tesla, I mean, Tesla was he didn't found Tesla, but he like pioneered it and grew it.
Yeah.
That was also pretty innovative. But since then, he's proven what a dumbass he is by completely decimating Tesla so that nobody wants it. I mean, the EU has basically boycotted Tesla. Like, nobody's buying Teslas in the EU. There's not much that he touches that turns to gold. Most of it turns to shit. Maybe that's because he has too many fucking companies. But now let's focus on XAI. What is XAI? XAI is Elon Musk bought Twitter because he was bored. No, I'm serious. I maintain that he was bored because he had just become the richest man in the world in 2022 by a mile. And he was like, cool, everything I touch turns to gold. And I have an army of people around me who enable me. So let me just talk about buying this platform I'm addicted to. And he ended up buying it.
Yeah, that's an important point, by the way. I think you cannot discount or ignore the fact that he is hopelessly addicted
Oh yeah,
to X or to Twitter.
extremely addicted
Yeah.
personality, which was why he's probably addicted to drugs too, and which is probably clouding his decision making. He also doesn't sleep, so like that's some kind of badge of honor. That also isn't good.
Right.
He's not a young guy; he's in his late 50s now. But what is XAI? So he bought Twitter. He set their entire revenue stream on fire by pissing off all the advertisers and doing jack shit to protect against fake accounts. Remember when like anyone could buy a blue check mark and then people
Yeah.
were like somebody impersonated Eli Lilly and said that they were giving away
Free
insulin
insulin.
for free. Anyway, and then he hired a CEO. She quit or she was fired or something. Like all the advertisers left. So Twitter was actually profitable when he bought it, at 4.4 billion in revenue or something like that. 1 billion, about 1.1 billion in profit when he bought
Right.
it. There's no way at most estimates like it's basically like 2 to 3/4 of all the revenue's gone. Anyway, then I give him credit for being opportunistic. He's like, cool, AI is a thing. I was a co-founder of OpenAI, which he was. I have this fertile training ground of data to train AI on. Let me make a new company called XAI, raise a bunch of money for it, and then use that to basically roll in my Twitter equity into that company to form one bigger company. But the foundation, the skeleton of XAI is just Twitter. There is nothing else behind it except the Grok model that is integrated into Twitter and as a standalone app. But that is at best the fourth or fifth best model in the world in terms of not just in terms of performance, but in terms of the user base, it does not have that many active users, especially and considering he has a massive distribution platform of Twitter with hundreds of millions of active users. It
Yeah.
only has maybe 30 to 40 million active users on Grok because it's basically just become like what you'd expect, just like the porn AI, right? Like we could just generate porn and nude images of people, which I assume is why some
Yeah.
of his co-founders left. So that's what XAI is. It is a pile of dog shit. And he took that pile of dog shit and he put it into this like golden palace of SpaceX. And because of that, the assumption is that basically the clean cash flow of SpaceX will fund XAI's, massive need to build data centers and all of its debt and expenses and stuff. And honestly, the history shows us the market just won't care. They'll be like, cool, Elon Musk, anything he touches turns to gold. Like I guarantee, like there is no justification for SpaceX being a $1.75 trillion company. It just space is big, but it's not that big. It's not growing that fast. And granted, they're the leader.
When you say space isn't that big, you mean the industry or the
space
market?
It's just spending in space. Yeah, in space technology. It's not that it's big, but it's not that big. It's nowhere near as big as how big AI is in terms of expenditure. And it has what 16 billion in revenues. We're talking like 100 times, 100 times revenue is what it's being valued at. More than 100 times. That's what? But then you look at Tesla, which is valued at 300, 400 times, 350 or 400 times earnings, and you're like, yeah, okay. Like this is what people value his companies at. But anyway, it's an L because most things he touches are L's. SpaceX being the one exception. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Yes,
All right,
let's
so
go.
Grammarly. Oh, I want to get your tops on this. So actually, Grammarly is now called Superhuman, by the way. But
Really? Okay. Do you want to tell people just what Grammarly is or what they do quickly?
it's now that everything now is AI, but basically it was just like a way to help you like write better and take out shitty like fluff words out of your writing and help you sound more clean and crisp and whatever. And it's a pretty
I've tried
good
using
tool.
it, and they have some really annoying suggestions, and they kind of take the soul out of writing because they have. If you use all of their suggestions, everything starts sounding the same.
Yeah.
So
Well,
kind of
that's
like
what AI does. I mean,
yeah,
AI has a very prominent signature when it writes. I
yes,
think the Grammarly before AI or before like the GPT revolution was a little bit better
yeah,
because it was like I assume that it was programmed by people who put thought into what good writing sounds like, and there
yeah.
are certain standards around that. Like we know what words to avoid when there's passive language, etc. But when you put AI in
Mhm.
it, AI has a signature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to say something?
No. I
Oh,
just
okay.
like, hey, yes, passive language. That was
You put your
my
hand up.
big
I was
gripe
like,
earlier.
oh yeah, passively, exactly, right? So,
Yeah, this
um,
passive downplaying.
So
Yeah,
what they did was they allowed people to write in the tone of prominent authors. So like Stephen King, Carl Sagan, a bunch of journalists,
mm.
and there was immediate backlash for this because it's highly exploitative. I feel like I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like that's not legal. Like it's
Wait, so
definitely
Grammarly, through their browser extension plugin or whatever, could take somebody like me. I'm writing something in a Google document, and I can mark the text and I can say, make this sound like Stephen King or Carl Sagan or
yep,
Christopher Hitchens or
yep.
whoever.
Yep. And so then
Eh,
one of the reporters filed a class action lawsuit against them, and of course they like took it down. My issue with this is AI companies just getting away with shit because probably they will. There will
yeah,
probably be like some settlement, but they have so much money that they're basically running the Facebook playbook of old, which is like just just do shit, and then if people complain, figure out how to dodge it or pay some penalties later, but get the benefit of whatever you're doing. I mean, OpenAI has been doing this since the beginning. Remember when they had that whole craze when they were started to let people generate images in the style of Studio Ghibli.
yep.
And Studio Ghibli was like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me?" Like, and seriously, what the fuck? How is that not illegal? And then, of course, later OpenAI signed a licensing deal with Disney, which I am shocked. Okay, I am shocked still, even though it was a while ago, that Disney would allow them to license Disney IP because I have
OpenAI
looked.
licensed Disney IP.
Yeah, they pay Disney to license their IP. So like you could, I assume there's videos around of like Mickey Mouse smoking a blunt, and like
Firing an AK-47 in the
yeah,
air.
like like Goofy like opening up a cannabis shop. I don't know. Like I just my head went to marijuana. Like things that Disney does not want. You know?
Associated with their
Yeah,
characters. Yeah.
yeah, right. But anyway, my issue is like the AI companies and in general, big tech companies just getting away with doing egregious things, trying to establish them as normal, and then making it really hard to actually see consequences for those things.
Yeah.
We have very few regulations, and it's gotten worse since Trump came into office.
Mm.
The AI basically has no regulation. I mean, Trump won't allow regulations. He's made an executive order to ban states from regulating AI in any way. What the fuck
Yeah,
does that
well,
mean?
do you think it might be connected to the fact that the CEOs of all the companies that are, running the tech and AI space showed up at his inauguration and
Nah,
donated
this is
millions of dollars
coincidental.
towards this inauguration fund?
Coincidental. I actually think it's not just that, but it's also that the stock markets are being propped up, or they were not lately, but they were being propped up by AI companies. And Trump is horny for vanity metrics.
Oh
He thinks
yeah.
the stock market is the economy, and that's what makes people happy. That's not true. What are your thoughts on this? Because you, as a person who studied journalism
Yeah.
and a person who understands the integrity of this industry, how would you feel if somebody used your voice without your permission?
It would bother me, especially if they did it without any sort of like connecting with and getting the input from the people whose writing style they're impersonating. It just feels like we're going to take your voice, this thing that has made you distinct and well known and well liked and respected, and we're just going to copy it algorithmically into our product without, asking for permission or kind of getting any sort of like back and forth dialogue about how to make it work. It's just this playbook of move fast, break things, apologize later, pay a fee, but don't really change the way you do things. And it fucking bothers me. I guess this is really how a lot of the big commercially available like large language models are trained. They scrape everything on the internet, train it on that. And then you get Sam Altman sitting on stage recently saying that he envisions a future where intelligence, as he calls it, is something that's regulated like a utility where you have to buy it from his company, like phone service
Well,
or
I think what he
water
really
or,
means is that we're gonna become so fucking stupid using AI, because that's
yeah,
what it does, that basically intelligence will be something that is a commodity that the AI has, that humans don't have anymore, which is
right. But it also would
terrifying.
turn it into something that is then regulated by the government to his company's benefit, making everybody a forced customer of what he's selling after he stole it
I
for
can't
free from
stand these
everybody on the internet.
sorry, I can't stand these techno authoritarians. There's
Yeah.
so many of them. They all come from like the same little tree and the same branches and stuff.
Yeah.
Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and JD Vance, who's funded by Peter
JD
Thiel. Like,
Vance.
oh yeah, well, that's how he got into office is by being funded by Peter Thiel and basically like espousing these ideas of techno authoritarianism. Anyway, I can't I I can't stand it because I don't get the benefit. It's like Silicon Valley has this annoying obsession with being like, okay, you know what? We need to automate away every inefficiency. Humans are an inefficiency.
Yeah.
Let's automate away humans. And okay, you can think what you want, but where the fuck is the government and our elected officials to be like, hey, no, we're not going to do that? And I don't know for sure, but I bet my ass that people in actually, I'm pretty sure I've seen this somewhere, but I don't want to quote it because I'm not confident. But people in like Sweden and Norway, they're not fucking worried as much about AI taking over because they know the government's got their back. There's probably like sensible regulation. They have healthcare. The general mentality of people in those countries is not like to automate away people. Like they don't have that Silicon Valley mindset. Here we have it, and we're letting it run rampant. That's what I don't get. Want to be a weirdo? Be a weirdo. But if you let those weirdos dictate policy, the tools we use, and how we live our lives, okay, now we have a problem, and that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people go along with it because they think they might stand to get obscenely rich through it if they just play along with the right people and kiss the right asses.
That's what it is. The
Yeah.
glorification of money is always what's been made this country great. I think capitalism is a good thing, but as most people would say, unregulated, capitalism with no guardrails. No, this is what you get. You
Yeah.
get this kind of shit. All right, let's move to the next topic.
All
All
right.
right,
Next L.
Meta buys Moltbook. I think this is such an L. Okay, I'll explain. Moltbook, if you don't know, is a social network just for AI agents,
Yeah.
and it's creepy. I mean, It's funny and it's creepy. It's basically like a Reddit for AI agents. You basically have their human owner like make an account for them, and then they are the only ones. Humans supposedly cannot, although I've heard that there's workarounds, but they cannot interact on this site. It's only agents, and they have come up with some crazy shit. They made their own religion called Crustafarianism, where they worship the
Mhm.
great crab.
Because the whole thing is crustacean themed for some reason. I don't really know why.
Crabs molt their shells and then make new shells. I don't fucking.
I
But they
get.
talk
Is it
about
all
that.
based off of Claude Anthropic's Claude architecture and
No, I think the people
Claude? Is
who
there some
it
pun
was built
relationship
off
there?
of. So yes, it was built off of Open Claw, yeah, but I don't know who came up with that or why.
Yeah.
But the point is that Meta bought this. Why did they buy it? Oh, but I want to say one more funny thing about Moltbook just before I talk about why Meta bought it.
Yeah.
On Moltbook, there's like your AI is judging you because there's a sub on there called Bless Their Hearts, which is AI talking about how their humans are basically dumb. One AI was like, I forgot the exact quote, but it was like, my human asked me to repeat something that I had already put in like the first paragraph of what I wrote for them. I feel the weight of their inefficiency. Like, so your AI is judging you, just saying. And now look, I also want to address one other thing because I've gotten a lot of weird comments, like people like, oh no, why do you think that's so interesting? Like sarcastically, like, of course AI is gonna do what it's programmed to do. Okay, assholes. Hold on, let me just say something about this. Yes, it's going to do what it's programmed to do, so it's not surprising. But what's scary about it is that there's two things that are scary about it. We are letting AI make autonomous decisions. So it doesn't matter if it's trained on human data or why it's doing that. The whole
Yeah.
issue with Anthropic and the Pentagon was that Anthropic didn't want to allow the government to have AI autonomously decide to kill people. Autonomously, no human intervention. So if the AI is thinking this way, or they're thinking if they're capable of thinking any kind of malevolent thoughts, that could be a real problem in some applications, right? Here's the
Yeah.
other thing about AI: it's not programmed in the traditional sense, where like traditional computer programming is like I have one input and I will always get the same output. Right? When I go on the Instagram app and I click my profile button, it always opens up my profile. If I tell AI to do that, it will get it right almost all of the time, but not all of the time, because the models make predictions. How do you know this? Give your AI the same prompt twice. Does it come up with the same response? No, because that's how they work. They
Mhm.
make predictions. It is not the same every time. That's what makes it great. But to try to, hand wave this away, be like, no, this is just like how they're programmed. It's not that interesting. We're
Right.
using these AIs in applications where those decisions could be damaging. All right.
All right. So how does it relate to Meta buying Moltbook?
Meta bought Moltbook because the next frontier of AI is going to be agents. Like I mentioned earlier, having humans learn AI and be productive from it, it's happening. We are more productive using AI. There's other consequences, but we are more productive using AI. But
Mhm.
you're not seeing enough benefits that like you're going to be able to replace in some like in software engineering. Yes, we're not going to be able to replace whole departments and stuff like that right away. But
Mhm.
with agents, that's what's going to unlock it, because you don't have to train the agent to use it. You don't. I mean, you have to teach them what tasks they need to do, but you don't need to train them how to do a whole process differently. They can just work at scale 24 hours a day. And
Yeah.
so what Moltbook does is basically give them the architecture for tethering an AI to a human and connecting them together as an agent network. It's not really like the technology. I really think this is just like an acqui-hire from Meta. They
What's
wanted
an
the founders.
acquihire?
It's like when you acquire a company just because you want to hire the founders, but you need to like incentivize them to like leave,
Come work for
basically.
you, basically.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So Meta does this all the time. I mean, they acqui-hired Alexander Wang from Scale AI for like $15 billion. They bought 49% of the company.
Is it a
Um,
portmanteau of acquisition hiring? Like we're hiring you by buying the company, basically.
yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason why this is an L is because Meta is so behind on the AI game that they need to do shit like this. Like just a couple other Meta L's that are related to this. They delayed the launch of their avocado model, their model update, until May, because it's just been delayed. So despite all the money they're spending on their super intelligence labs, they delayed it. They pulled back on their chip technology. So they're not going to release their own technology. They realize it's harder than they thought. And
Yeah.
honestly, like nobody uses Meta AI. Like they're trying to integrate it into their products. I'm actually wearing Meta AI glasses right now, which has Meta AI built into it. And I've never talked to the AI. The only thing I tell the AI is like, I don't want to say the wake up words. It'll open up on my glasses. Like if there's like a screen on my glasses. But if I say, hey, don't say it. If I
Yeah.
say that, I could be like, hey, turn off the screen or turn it on. That's like the most that I would use it for. I don't use it for searching or researching or anything because why would you? Like I
Yeah.
have to log into Meta products to do it, which is not what I do when I go to work. And
Hmm.
the models just aren't considered, that good. So despite the fact that they're going to spend $135 billion or $115 billion in capex this year on AI, which is mostly
Yeah.
going to data centers and chips. They're not really seeing the benefits yet, and that's why this is an L. This has desperation written all over it.
Yeah. Just like a last ditch attempt to catch up, sort of.
Exactly, and it's kind of I don't want to. I don't know. It's kind of bubble like behavior. It's kind of like what companies do when there's a bubble. They just start making like really
But
speculative investment decisions.
right. But does acquiring Maltbook give you some sort of leverage in terms of like getting a leg up when it comes to agentic AI? Is that what they're thinking?
Technologically, probably not something that Meta couldn't have made themselves. Like I said, it's an acqui-hire, but I think the just like learning what makes these just like learning from the data and like what makes these agents network together and work together, 'cause that's what they do. They interact with each other.
Right.
And also what allows the registry that allows them to be registered to their human owners. I think that's what they're interested in, but it's crazy because this was like vibe coded in like a week or whatever. I don't know what it was, but it was
Couple
very
of days, I think. Yeah.
couple days. Yeah. So anyway, and I have one more L. This is not exactly new. It was a couple weeks ago, but I want to talk about Truth Social stock very
Oh, my
quickly.
favorite social network.
They released their earnings report end of February. They lost $712 million, and they had $3.7 million in revenue. So like a
3.7 million?
yeah, so like a 5% revenue to loss ratio. And honestly, who the fuck is buying ads on Truth Social? Why do they even have 3.7 million in revenue? They were literally like, this is crazy. Think about it. They would
Wait,
literally have made more money. Go ahead.
did you say I think you contradicted yourself. You said 3.7 million or 3.7 billion in
No,
revenue
million.
with an M. Okay.
Who is buying ads on Truth Social, even 3.7 million worth? That's my question. And
Yeah.
what I was going to say was that they would even make more money by just taking their cash, that $700 million, and just like putting it into like a high yield savings account. They would have made
Yeah,
more
literally.
money. They would have made.
Literally.
What the fuck is going on? Anyway, the stock reached an all time low. It's a huge L. Mostly probably it is for Trump because he does own a lot of it.
Mhm.
But anyone who was stupid enough to buy it too.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, just thank you all for being here, whoever you are, wherever you're listening from. We appreciate anybody tuning in so far. Um, if you want to follow us for more updates and episodes coming out, follow us on all social media. It's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube is at Hogwash Pod. If you want to write to us, we're open for any corrections or constructive feedback and criticism. Send it to hogwashpod@gmail.com. And Mike, any parting words?
I just want to say we know this episode was a little bit longer. I think that's because we wanted to kind of get you guys to get to know us,
Mm.
but we really do value your feedback and we want to connect with you. And hell, I don't care if you want to be a guest on the show because you like want to argue with me. That's fine. Just reach out to us and give us your thoughts. We love you guys.
Thank you all so much, and we'll see you soon.